With a remaster as well as the first English release of Fatal Frame Mask of the Lunar Eclipse right around the corner, I, Suggestive Gaming, thought it would be a great time to go over the events of the entire Fatal Frame / Project Zero series thus far, in chronological order. Do note that this will include the plot of the original release of Mask of the Lunar Eclipse, so feel free to skip it using the chapter markers if you don't want to be spoiled. One thing to note is that I won't be covering most supplemental material, including the 2014 novel Fatal Frame: A Curse Affecting Only Girls, which was later adapted into a live-action film, a manga from the same year entitled Fatal Frame: Shadow Priestess, as well as a Japan-exclusive mobile game, as their stories don't really tie into that of the games and would probably work better in a standalone video, so let me know if you'd like to see that in the comments. As a quick little bonus to this video, however, I will be covering the spin-off Nintendo 3DS exclusive Spirit Camera: The Cursed Memoir, as well as its backstory. Also, when covering the storyline of the second installment in the series, I'll be using the 2012 Nintendo Wii remake instead of the original. As another note, while every game in the main series features multiple endings, the subsequent titles ended up confirming one true ending, save for the latest entry. As such, I'll be focusing on the canon endings of each game I cover, but I'll try to quickly mention other possibilities as we go along. For one final note, I'd like to thank the various folks in the Fatal Frame / Project Zero fan community for translating many of the Japan-exclusive installments to English. Without them, us English speakers would never get to enjoy that content, and this video could never have been made. Each translation I've referenced is credited in the description. Now, without further ado, this is what you need to know about Fatal Frame / Project Zero. Our story begins in Japan during the Edo period, where the Himuro family conducts the strangling ritual beneath their mansion every 10 years in order to prevent the Hell Gate from opening and subsequently unleashing a deadly air from the underworld called Malice. This ritual is performed on a Shrine Maiden, selected through a child's game called Demon Tag. Once selected, the Shrine Maiden is isolated from the world for 3,669 days in order to remove her willingness to live before she is purified by the light of the moon and her limbs are attached to a mechanism. The Himuro family master then leads his priests in operating the mechanism to pull the Shrine Maiden apart, sacrificing her and keeping the Hell Gate closed for another decade. However, the selected Shrine Maiden, Kyrie Himuro, meets a male visitor and falls in love, giving her second thoughts about the ritual. On December 13th of the year 1837, the ritual is conducted, but at the last minute, Kyrie decides she wants to live, causing it to fail. The Hell Gate then bursts open, shattering the Holy Mirror and allowing Malice to flow into the Himuro mansion. This event, known as the Calamity, leads to the loss of 1,347 souls. Kyrie's soul is split into two, a malice-filled evil spirit and an untainted version of her younger self. Luckily, the Hell Gate only opens partially, and the existence of 5 other lesser mirrors surrounding the mansion keeps the malice at bay and traps the souls within the now abandoned Himuro mansion. Around this time, in another region, a young boy named Kunihiko Asao meets a girl named Shiragiku, who seemingly has telepathic abilities, on Mount Kajiroi. Shiragiku is chosen to become their community's version of a Shrine Maiden, to be sent to the nearby Mount Hikami in a wooden box to become a sacrificial pillar. This ritual would cause the maiden to relive all of her life's pains to purify the malice-like black water to protect the mountain, before the water would wash her out of existence. To prolong this process, men are brought to participate in ghost marriage, which binds their soul to one of the encapsulated maidens. Shiragiku chooses Kunihiko to be her partner in ghost marriage, giving him a lock of her hair to maintain a connection to her. While Kunihiko promises to return to the mountain at a later time to join her in ghost marriage, he soon comes to believe his experiences with the girl were simply a dream, leaving her alone in the box for the years to come. Over the next few years, Kunihiko Asao begins to travel the region, picking up post-mortem photography. After developing a camera that could trap souls, he is invited back to Mount Hikami to photograph a shrine maiden, Osei Kurosawa. Upon returning to the mountain, Kunihiko doesn't notice Shirogiku's presence, as he isn't carrying the lock of her hair. Instead, he takes Osei's photo, and upon meeting, the pair fall in love, giving Osei doubts about going through the ritual. Asao then takes the photograph of her with him as he leaves the mountain, carrying a piece of her along with it. Osei is then placed in her box, but at the same time, a man named Kyozo Kyuryugi becomes enraged by the Shrine Maidens and massacres all of the remaining ones on the mountain before taking his own life. Their pain resonates with Osei, and combined with her unresolved love for Kunihiko, causes her ritual to fail, flooding her box with black water, turning her spirit evil, and tainting the mountain. Near the end of the Edo period, the now Dr. Kunihiko Asao begins to work on various paranormal devices, including a camera with the ability to exorcise ghosts called the Camera Obscura. In his travels, he meets with a man named Kaname Kuze, who inspires him to create a spirit stone radio, which can play voices from the spirit world. After Kunihiko leaves, the Kuze family's shrine undergoes its own disaster. Inside the Kuze shrine, their own maidens are engraved with the pain of worshippers in the form of a tattoo of snake and holly. These tattooed priestesses are then used in various rituals which keep the rift between the lands of the living and the dead closed. Much like the other maidens, a tattooed priestess named Raika begins to question her oath when she begins to dream of her love, Kaname Kuze. When the matriarch of the Kuze family, Yashu, discovers that Kaname had secretly met with Raika, she murders him in front of the maiden, hoping to completely sever her connection to preserve the rift. Devastated, Raika allows the tattoo to enter her eyes, causing the rift to open and slowly spread into the real world in an event known as the Unleashing. Yashu then uses the little time allowed to have carpenters seal the shrine, turning themselves into sacrificial pillars to halt the spread of the rift. During the early years of the Meiji period, Dr. Kunihiko Asao gives prototypes of the Camera Obscura, a supernatural projector, and the Spirit Stone radio to his friend Seijiro Makabe. Seijiro takes these inventions with him, as well as his assistant Ryozo Munakata, to investigate Minakami Village, where he hopes to learn about its own line of secret family rituals. There, Seijiro stays with the Kurosawa family, who are preparing their twin daughters, Yae and Sei, for the Crimson Sacrifice ritual, in which the elder twin must strangle the younger in order to make them one again. This act was thought to keep the Hellish Abyss, a pit beneath the village that connects to the underworld, from spreading malice-like darkness across the land. Unbeknownst to Seijiro, the villagers choose him to become a temporary sacrifice to appease the Hellish Abyss. The twin girls warn Seijiro, who sends Ryozo away to escape this fate. After Ryozo leaves, however, the village's veiled priests capture Seijiro and place him in a cell before he is sacrificed. Sei and Yae then attempt to escape the village themselves, with help from another twin named Itsuki Tachibana, to avoid the Crimson Sacrifice, but are split up. Sei is captured by the villagers, while Yae goes missing. The villagers then kill Sei and throw her into the abyss in an attempt to appease it, but their efforts are in vain, as the ritual fails and darkness spreads through the village in an event called the Repentance. The spirit of Sei and the others who were sacrificed, including Seijiro, then return to murder the remaining villagers. Yae later returns to the village to find it mysteriously missing, and she soon loses her memories. Ryozo returns and finds her, rescuing and taking her in. At some point, Dr. Kunihiko Asao visits Rogetsu Isle and attends a dancing ceremony called the Rogetsu Kagura, which, when performed on the night of a lunar eclipse, opens a gate to the land of the dead to allow lingering spirits to cross over to the other side. Later, Kunihiko learns of the Himuro Mansion and the Holy Mirror and travels there, hoping to use it to finish the camera obscura. While he finds a piece of the Holy Mirror and uses it to complete his invention, he is never seen or heard from again, and the camera obscura is left in the abandoned mansion. Years later, Ryozo Munakata moves into the Himuro Mansion with his now wife, Yae, hoping to learn more about the Hellgate rituals. When their daughter, Mikoto, finds the camera obscura, Yae begins to use it and accidentally discovers its power to capture spirits, driving her mad and eventually leading to her hanging herself from a tree. Mikoto and her friends also go missing, leading Ryozo to try to investigate the Hellgate to uncover the mansion's evil forces. Taking a piece of the Holy Mirror he found, Ryozo descends below the mansion, but is found and killed by the spirit of Kyrie Himuro, the shrine maiden that caused the calamity. Mikoto is then led to safety by the good half of Kyrie's spirit and is later taken in by a family friend, who finds her holding the camera obscura. Years later, Mikoto marries and has a daughter named Mayuki, who grows up to marry a researcher named Masato Hinasaki. The two then have 2 children, a boy named Mafuyu and a girl named Miku. While raising her children, Miyuki's husband disappears, and she tragically takes her own life after becoming overwhelmed by the effects of the camera obscura left to her by her mother. This leaves Mafuyu to raise his younger sister on his own. During the late 1970s on Regetsu Isle, the Regetsu Kagura ceremony is held. However, secretly, 2 inhabitants named Shigeto Haibara and Soya Yomotsuki also conduct a taboo ritual called the Kiraigu at the same time. This ritual, which was abandoned after failing many years prior due to a mask called the Mask of the Lunar Eclipse, which caused an event called the Day Without Suffering. Shigeto's daughter, Sakuya, is then chosen as one of the participants, given the title of the Utsuwa, and forced to wear a recreation of the Mask of the Lunar Eclipse. This ritual fails, however, when Sakuya begins to panic, shattering the mask into several pieces before she falls into a coma. Sakuya is then hidden in the basement of the island's sanitarium. 5 other girls who were kidnapped and forced to participate in the event are also taken underground to the Moonbeam Cave, where they are left without their memories. Shigeto's other child, a doctor named Yo, then comes under investigation after multiple experiments in curing an ailment called Getsuyu syndrome wind up in the deaths of his patients. A detective named Choshiro Kirishami arrives on the island in search of Yo, and Sayaka Minazuki, the mother of one of the kidnapped girls, asks him to find her daughter. After searching, Choshiro finds the 5 girls and they are safely evacuated by the police. Sayaka reunites with her daughter and leaves the island as well. 2 years later, Sakuya awakens, now fully cursed with Getsuyu syndrome. At the same time, Choshiro returns to the island to again search for Yo Haibara. Sakuya breaks free and roams the island, using the abilities of the syndrome's final phase, blooming, to curse and kill anyone she comes across. Choshiro spots her, but is able to escape and eventually find Yo. Choshiro gives chase, but Yo is able to stab him atop the roof of the hospital. The pair then fall to both of their deaths. Sakuya then finishes her massacre, finishing the second Day Without Suffering and leaving the island now abandoned. In 1986, the 5 holy mirrors surrounding Himuro Mansion are destroyed by earthquakes. Novelist Junsei Takamine hears of this and, after reading Ryozo Munakata's research, decides to visit the mansion with his editor, Koji Agata, and his assistant, Tomoe Hirasaka. Soon, Kyrie Himuro's curse traps them in the mansion, and the 3 are subsequently killed. Days after Junsei goes missing, his pupil, Mafuyu Hinasake, grandson of Makoto Munakata, visits the mansion to search for him, taking his mother's camera obscura with him. There he encounters the evil spirit of Kyrie, who notices the man's resemblance to the man she fell in love with before her death. Instead of killing Mafuyu, she elects to keep him trapped in the mansion, keeping the closest thing to her lost love next to her. The following week, after Mafuyu doesn't return home, his younger sister, Miku Hinasaka, follows his trail to the mansion. Miku, who inherited a sixth sense from her mother allowing her to see things other people can't see, fears for her brother's safety, due in part to him being the only person she can connect to due to her gift. On her way, she spots Kyrie's good spirit, who shows her the way. Inside the mansion, Miku finds the camera Obscura her brother dropped and uses it to fend off the various spirits possessing the mansion after the calamity. Miku then spends the next 4 nights exploring the mansion, learning about the fates of those who died there as well as Kyrie's history. Despite Kyrie attacking her several times, Miku is able to recover the pieces of the Holy Mirror and reach the Hell Gate, where she finds Kyrie and Mafuyu. After a final battle with Kyrie, the camera Obscura breaks, and Miku uses the final piece of the Holy Mirror that was within it to complete the relic. She then uses the repaired Holy Mirror to cleanse the malice from Kyrie. It's at this point that Mafuyu can decide to stay behind with Kyrie as she fulfills her duty as Shrine Maiden to keep the gate closed. Ultimately, he chooses to stay behind her, and Miku barely escapes as the mansion collapses, burying Mafuyu and Kyrie underground. Miku then finds herself outside, where she watches the trapped souls of the mansion finally float away in peace. The next year, a geological surveyor named Masumi Mikamura is sent to the Minakami region to survey the land that would be flooded by a dam that is to be built nearby. While there, however, he somehow finds himself inside the Lost Village, the missing Minakami village which disappeared after the Repentance event many years before. While the search for Masumi is called off after 10 days, his girlfriend, Miyaki Sudo, goes on her own to find him. While the pair are eventually reunited, Masumi is killed by the spirit of Seijiro Makabe. The ghost of Masumi then loses control and kills Miyaku. One day in 1988, twin sisters Mio and Mayu Amakura visit an area where they used to play as children. There, Mayu spots a crimson butterfly and follows it into the woods. Mio follows her sister, and the pair soon find themselves inside the Lost Village. There, the pair find the camera Obscura and encounter the various spirits trapped within the village. The twins are soon separated when Mayu follows more butterflies. While Mio searches for her sister, she learns of the fate of the Minakami village as well as the Crimson Sacrifice ritual. She also comes across the only friendly spirit in the village, that of Itsuki Tachibana, who believes Mio and Mayu to be the Kurosawa twins, and he gives them his help so they can escape again. When Mio finally finds her sister, now under Sei's influence, their reunion is short-lived. The spirits of the villagers take Mayu down below the village to the hellish abyss. Mio follows, and after finally defeating the spirit of Seijiro Makabe, she's met with her sister. At this point, Mio must make the decision to strangle her sister, who the villagers treat as the younger one. Despite the various outcomes that would arise should she decide not to go through with the ritual, Mio eventually does so, strangling her sister to become one with her, leaving only a crimson butterfly in her place. Mio then follows the butterfly out of the village. Sometime later, Mio looks over the river formed by the dam, which has flooded the valley that once housed the village. On Mio's neck is the mark of a red butterfly, denoting that she and her sister are now together forever. A week later, Mio is discovered and left in the care of her uncle, Kei Amakura, but she refuses to tell him about what happened to her sister. Kei then begins to investigate the legend of spirited aways, or people who have mysteriously gone missing, hoping to learn more about Mayu's disappearance. Around a month after the events in the Lost Village, Mio begins to become more and more tired, sleeping frequently but having horrific nightmares. Kay then learns of an urban legend called the Manor of Sleep, which seems to be related to Mio's symptoms, and he asks his friend, Yu Asao, an anthropologist who also studies the spirited away cases, to help investigate the legend. Coincidentally, Yu lives with his old colleague Mafuyu Hinasaki's sister, Miku, the same girl who repaired the Holy Mirror and destroyed the Himuro mansion. In the process, Kay visits the Kuze Shrine, where the unleashing occurred, and discovers the camera Obscura. Upon bringing the camera home, Mio grows frightened, leading him to give it to Yu for safekeeping. Unfortunately, Yu and his fiancée, Rei Kurosawa, soon get in a car accident, which Yu does not survive. Rei, a photographer, begins to isolate herself, only leaving the house on assignment. The next month, a tragic plane crash occurs, leaving only a woman named Yoshino Takigawa the sole survivor. She is recovered and hospitalized, but begins to feel survivor's guilt. She begins to dream of the Manor of Sleep, before noticing a pair of tattoos on herself that nobody else can see. On one of her photography assignments, Rei is sent to the Kuze Shrine, and Miku joins her. While there, Rei catches a glimpse of what appears to be Yu, and she snaps a photo. After following his apparition, she is pulled into a dream of the Manor of Sleep, where she continues to follow him before she comes across Reika, the tattooed priestess who caused the unleashing at the Kuze Shrine. She then finds herself being held down on a stone floor as a tattoo envelops her. Rei suddenly awakens and she returns home with Miku. There, Rei develops the photographs she took and is shocked when she sees Yu in one of them. That night, she dreams of the manor once again, where she sees Yoshino Takigawa deep in her survivor's guilt. Suddenly, Reika appears again, and while Rei tries to run, she is unable to escape before the tattooed woman touches her, infecting her with the tattooed curse. Over the next few nights, Rei continues to explore the Manor of Sleep, soon discovering that Miku and Kei Amakura have become infected as well, as she is able to explore their memories through their influence on the manor. The three then learn the history of the shrine, as well as Reika's fate. Soon, however, Miku's curse progresses to the point where she can no longer awaken from her dreams. Kei then determines that he must impale Reika to put her to rest and finally bring an end to the Manor of Sleep. He is unable to do so, however, and ends up trapped himself, leaving Rei alone to figure out how to free him and Miku. In her dreams, Rei is able to defeat Reika using the camera Obscura and finds an ocean, the abyss of the horizon, where she sends Reika off in a boat to the other side. There she also finds Yu, who tells her to go on living without him. He then removes the tattoos from her and crosses to the other side himself. Rei then awakens and finds herself free of the tattooed curse, before finding that Miku and Kei have been cured as well. Later that year, Miku is able to visit the Abyss of the Horizon, where she is finally able to meet with her brother Mafuyu's spirit once again. While she is unable to stay with her brother, when she returns, she finds herself now with child. Miku then quits as Rei's assistant and moves out before giving birth to her daughter, Miyu, who is born half living and half dead. Around this time, two of the girls that were taken to participate in the Kiraigao ritual, but were later saved by Choshiro Kirishima, Marie Shinomiya and Tomoe Nanamura, die under mysterious circumstances. One of the other girls, Misaki Asao, then sees a vision beckoning her back to Regetsu Isle. Another surviving girl, Madoka Tsukimori, worries for her safety and joins her as the pair return to the island. Unfortunately, the two are separated, and Madoka is soon surrounded and killed by a group of ghosts. Sometime later, another surviving girl, Ruka Minazuki, also returns to Regetsu Isle, hoping to find out what happened to the other girls, as well as to hopefully regain some of her lost memories. There she discovers the camera Obscura and is forced to use it when the ghost of Madoka surprisingly attacks. She then begins to recover the pieces of the mask of the Lunar Eclipse while remembering her past, as well as a song her mother played that could calm the moon and end the blooming phase of the Getsuyu syndrome. Around this same time, Choshiro Kirishama's spirit awakens on the island, seemingly unaware of his death. All he can remember is Sayaka Minazuki asking him to search for Ruka, so he does so once again. On his way, he finds the spirit of Yo Haibara, and the pair recreate their chase and confrontation, leading Choshiro to come to terms with his fate. Mizaki also awakens and finds the hall where the Kiraigu was performed. There she finds Sakuya Haibara and after a battle regains her memories. Sakuya then appears in her normal, healthy form, and the pair hug before she disappears, leaving Misaki to fall unconscious before later disappearing. With the mask of the Lunar Eclipse reformed, Ruka climbs a nearby lighthouse to battle Sakuya one final time before playing the song she remembered on a large organ. The song successfully calms Sakuya, allowing Choshiro to put the mask on her face, finally finishing the ritual and bringing an end to her curse. The spirits of the island are then able to cross over to the other side, including Choshiro, Sakuya, and Soya Yomotsuki, the creator of the mask, who takes it with him. It's at this point that Misaki can potentially awaken back inside the Lunar Underworld Shrine, where she finds Madoka's spirit. After their brief reunion, Madoka crosses over to the other side, and Misaki emerges on the shore of a beach, watching the rest of the spirits cross on. In the year 1992, Miku Hinasaki learns of the ritual of ghost marriage and decides to enter it with her brother Mafuyu as her partner. She then is placed in one of the wooden caskets and becomes a sacrificial pillar, leaving her daughter Miyu behind. Sometime later, a descendant of Dr. Kunihiko Asao, inventor of the camera Obscura, named Ren Hojo, spends a summer with the Asao family on Mount Kajiroi. There he finds the camera Obscura, as well as the lock of hair Shiragiku gave Kunihiko all those years ago. When Ren touches the lock of hair, he begins to dream about the ritual that put Shiragiku in the box of black water. Shortly after, 5 high school girls fall under the influence of the Guardians, shrine maidens that came in contact with black water after Osei Kurosawa's failed ritual. This leads them to Mount Hikami, where they all attempt to drown themselves. All succeed but 2 survivors, Haruka Momose and Fuyuhi Himeno. At some future point, a girl named Yuri Kozukata is involved in an accident that results in the death of her family, leaving her the only survivor. After this, she finds she has the ability to see the dead. To escape this fate, she goes to jump off of a cliff, but is saved at the last moment by Hisoka Kurosawa, a psychic investigator with the power to read the shadows left behind by others, who failed to save another woman who attempted the same act in the very same place sometime before. Hisoka then takes Yuri in, and they both live together above her store, Kurosawa's Antiques. Meanwhile, Miyu, now a teenager, decides to go looking for her mother on Mount Hikami. However, she is quickly surrounded by the ghosts of shrine maidens and trapped in a box and turned into a pillar. Around the same time, Ren Hojo asks his friend Kazuya Sakaki to search for an album of post-mortem photographs on Mount Hikami. There, however, he is forced into ghost marriage with Osei Kurosawa, but she rejects him, and he is placed inside one of the wooden boxes. With Kazuya missing, Ren asks Hisoka to search for him. Coincidentally, Haruka Momose, one of the surviving high school girls, goes missing on the mountain as well, and her friend and fellow survivor, Fuyuhi Himono, asks Hisoka to find her. Hisoka goes to Mount Hikami to investigate the various mysteries, and Yuri accompanies her. There, they're able to use a camera obscura Hisoka was given to fend off some spirits and find the album of photographs Ren was searching for. Ren's assistant, Rui Kagamiya, retrieves the album and returns it to Ren, who finds that one of the photos depicts the ghost marriage, which he recognizes from a recurring dream. Shortly after, Hisoka goes off to look for Haruka, and Yuri grows worried when she doesn't return. A few days later, Fuyui Himono returns to the antique shop, and once finding that Hisoka hasn't found Haruka yet, decides to head to the mountain to find her herself. Yuri follows Fuyuhi and soon finds Hisoka's camera obscura, touching it and using her newly awakened shadow reading ability to see that Hisoka was pulled into the water by a shrine maiden. Yuri then finds Fuyuhi and watches her slit her own throat before her spirit attacks. Yuri is able to fight the spirit off with Hisoka's camera obscura before returning back to the antique shop alone. Meanwhile, Ren and Rui head to the location where Hisoka found the album, and Rui attempts to jump to her death. Luckily, Ren stops her just in time, before having to fight a shrine maiden with the camera obscura. The pair then return home. Yuri returns to Mount Hikami to resume her search for Hisoka, but instead finds Haruka trapped in a casket. After rescuing her, the pair return back to the antique store, but that night, Fuyuhi's ghost appears and takes Haruka back to the mountain. Ren and Rui meanwhile learn of Kaiji Watare, the folklorist on Mount Hikami who put together the album. Hoping to learn more from his writings, the pair decide to visit his residence. Before they can leave, Ren surprisingly gets a call from the still missing Kazuya Sakaki, who tells Ren that he's getting married. After a brush with the spirit of Shiragiku, who asks why they didn't bring her token, they reach Watare's household. There they discover his writings, but after they leave the house, it vanishes into thin air. Yuri finds Hisoka's missing persons file for Miyu Hinazaki and decides to search for her on the mountain. Yuri finds Miyu and frees her from her casket, before taking her back to the shop, where she learns that Miyu also has the shadow reading abilities. Using all of the clues she's gained thus far, Yuri then goes to the Lake of the Departed on Mount Hikami's summit to look for Hisoka. There she sees Hisoka's shadow vanishing, but as she enters the water, Yuri is attacked by the spirit of Ose Kurosawa. She finds the camera obscura's effects useless on Ose and is forced to return to the antique shop. That night, Ren and Rui watch over the girls using the shop's surveillance cameras, and Ren fights off several invading ghosts. He soon passes out, and when he wakes up, he finds Yuri and Rui missing. He then talks to Miyu, who is heading to Mount Hikami with Yuri's camera obscura. Ren refuses to go with her, so she goes alone. Miyu reaches the Lake of the Departed and finds Yuri walking into the water. Miyu stops her, but the pair are chased off once again by Ose before returning home. Ren returns to the Watarai residence and finds Rui in one of the wooden boxes. Ren wakes her and has a vision where an old woman, who refers to him as Master Asao, takes him to his betrothed, which turns out to be Rui, dressed as a bride. Ren then snaps out of it and helps Rui out of the box before the pair are attacked by the spirit of Kazuya, whose own ghost wedding failed. Afterwards, the pair are able to return home as the house vanishes once again. Miyu takes Yuri's camera obscura and returns to the mountain, finally finding her mother's wooden box. The old woman appears and warns Miyu that she'll have to become a pillar as well, before Miyu fights her off with the camera. Miyu then opens the box and frees her mother, Miku, who still appears to be the age she was when she went into the box over a decade prior. Miku apologizes to Miyu, and the pair return to the antique shop, finally reunited. Meanwhile, Yuri returns to her search for Hisoka and finds the shrine on the water, the final destination for the shrine maidens set to become sacrificial pillars. There she finds Hisoka inside one of the boxes and frees her. After fighting a spirit inhabiting Hisoka, Yuri is able to take her back to the antique shop safely. After another night of Ren protecting the shop from spirits, Miku goes missing once again. Yuri, Ren, and Miyu all return to the mountain to search for information on Osei, Ghost Marriage, and Miku's whereabouts, respectively. It's at this point each person's paths can take multiple routes. Ren is able to visit the House of Joining, where the Ghost Marriage occurs. There he can take in Shirogiku's lock of hair or a photograph of Osei Kurosawa. If he takes the white hair, Shirigiku appears in the room and thanks him for fulfilling his ancestor Kunihiko Asao's promise to be her partner. Otherwise, Osei appears in the room and he learns about her relationship with Kunihiko. Regardless, the spirit allows Ren to live and he potentially returns to Rui's side in the antique shop. Miyu finds Miku at the Lake of the Departed, and at the borderline of life and death, Miku explains to her daughter her desire to be with Mafuyu on the other side. Miyu begs her mother to stay with her, and at this point Miku either vanishes, leaving her daughter behind, or returns with her back to the antique shop. Yuri eventually comes to the Shadow Spring, the source of the black water and gateway to the Netherworld. Osei Kurosawa then appears, and the pair engage in a final battle. Afterwards, Yuri either dies with Osei, or Yuri is able to restore Osei back to her original appearance before returning to her casket and taking the black water with her as she vanishes. Hisoka then arrives, and Yuri sheds a tear. This brings us to the end of the story of the Fatal Frame games so far, but, as mentioned in the intro, I'll be going over the story of Spirit Camera, the Cursed Memoir, as a quick bonus, so let's take it away. This story begins with the spread of a rumor concerning something called the Purple Diary. Some of the most famous incidents surrounding this rumor include one about the faceless boy who went missing playing a game of hide and seek, a doll that causes sleep paralysis, and a woman in black. High school students Yuko and Yoriko investigate the Purple Diary and its surrounding tales, but both wind up targeted by the Purple Diary. At some later point, another individual mysteriously receives the Purple Diary of Faces. Using the camera Obscura, the individual takes photos of the pages in the diary, pulling them into the diary where they begin uncovering the mystery of the others trapped within it. One of those trapped inside is a woman named Maya. Maya helps the individual along the way as they find the faceless boy and the doll, as well as learn of the woman in black, who takes the faces of those trapped in the diary. They eventually learn that the woman in black was a maiden involved in the Tokoyomi ritual, which involved sewing the maiden's eyes and mouth shut. This maiden, as it turned out, was actually Maya. The woman in black then captures Maya to try to reconnect with her, but the individual uses the camera Obscura to help break her free. The two sides of Maya then realize their sisterly bond and stay together in the Purple Diary, returning the individual back to the real world while freeing the other trapped souls. The Mayas then leave one final message, thanking them for their help. This brings us to the end of Suggestive Gaming's trip through the Fatal Frame / Project Zero games. Maybe someday I'll revisit some of the supplementary material. That manga was really long, so it would really have to be its own video. But until then, Mask of the Lunar Eclipse will take us back to the world of spirits and camera Obscura in just a few days. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. I know it's been a bit since the last video I've made, but after Metal Gear, I needed a bit of a break. By the way, if you haven't, you can check out that whole 6-hour incursion by clicking the link on screen now. This video, like all of my others, could only be possible thanks to the patrons and channel members on screen, and you can help out by becoming one of them as well. Otherwise, just leave me a comment letting me know what you'd like to see next. I hope to have a big 2023, so here's to more Suggestive Gaming. See you next time, folks.